And welcome to the daily space weather, folks. Looking at the sun on 304 angstroms. We're looking at some pretty violent whipping around filament type activity down here. We're looking at about 6.5 hours of your local yellow dwarf. There's the full image. Some filaments in the northeast also, and a little bit of activity rising down here. No sunspots. Weak solar output. Here's a 193 angstroms view. Not a lot of features to comment on. A little bit of activity rising right about here. So that's something you can look at on the colored magnetogram throughout the day. That could turn into some sort of magnetic complexity. And I won't comment on the polarity. Let's look at the U.S. geoelectric field. We're basically looking at the U.S. power grid here, folks. And we see some spikes coming in. KP index is at 4. We are at geomagnetic unrest conditions. Not good timing for people in places like North Dakota. Anyway, there's that image, and we have included the links to this in the description below the video. So we see this increased solar wind here. The solar wind has been ticking up over the past 6 hours. Now up to nearly 500 kilometers per second. Solar wind density 3.62 protons per cubic centimeter. Phi angle around 152. And let's look at the magnetosphere movies. Again, we do see significant geomagnetic ground perturbations, and we'll cover it in a minute. Anyway, here's the density on the geospace magnetosphere movie. And you're going to see some compression at the end there. Keep in mind, high density is shown in dark blue on this, low density shown in white. And here's the pressure. We see at the beginning, the majority of the pressure is in the magnetotail side of the planet. And then we see a spike coming in right as I did show prep once again, folks. And here are the ground geospace magnetic perturbations, changes in the Earth's B field, otherwise known as delta B. And we see significant current going through the planet here, despite not really being represented too much in the solar wind. Significant global B field changes. Let's put that back where it was before it refreshed. Going on for the last several hours here. And we'll look at the polar view also, as a lot of these magnetic perturbations are just all over the planet. This view just to show you that they do indeed emanate from the poles. Let that play through a second time before we move on to more stuff. Again, 10.7 centimeter radial flux back up to 68. I've drawn an orange line in here so you can see what solar minimum conditions are like in terms of the 10.7 centimeter radial flux, a measure of the sun's outermost corona. GOES magnetometer is looking pretty spiky as forecasted, as we are in the process of crossing the current sheet right now. Here's the Gong 2 data to corroborate what I've just said. And we are looking at old data here. Probably already crossed the current sheet polarity region here. And let's see, this data 1 hour and 22 minutes old. We should see a snapping across to the South Pole associated portion. Let's look at the last frame. And you can see that the Earth has no orange line at all here. An indication that we are probably already on the South Pole oriented portion. No surprises there. You see a little spike in the GOES electron flux here. Nothing representing any sort of satellite charging hazards. Here are the relativistic electrons in a fairly nominal range there. And there's one of my custom ringtones going off. This is usually when I get up, folks. It's 227. Anyway, there's the GOES X-ray flux, and it's looking pretty flatlined. And the KP is at 4, so geomagnetic unrest conditions, represented by a ramp up in the solar wind speed. It looks like a coronal hole wind stream, and it could be a pretty strong one, something to keep an eye on throughout the day. Speaking of ions, the pun is intentional. 24 hours of earthquakes include, about 23 hours ago from the shooting of this video, a 4.7 magnitude at the Philippines, followed by a 4.6 in Afghanistan. Here's a deep quake off the coast of Japan. Looks like it's south of Japan there. 4.6 at 418.8 kilometers depth. And next on the list is another deep quake at Fiji, a 4.6 magnitude at 563 kilometers depth. Taking place about 44 minutes after that one was a 5.0 at 200 kilometers depth in Afghanistan. Sadly, the earthquake risk there does not expire, as that's a deep quake. Here's a 4.0 in Mexico, as the 7+ magnitude earthquake drought continues, folks. If you're in an earthquake-prone zone, why not go outside and figure out which buildings may fall down if you try to evacuate yours? Your building evacuation works much better if you're prepped by knowing that a building facade might fall on you if you exit your door. Here's a 4.1 in Russia, that one at nearly 300 kilometers depth. And here's a 5.5. It looks like the largest quake of the past 24 taking place east of the North Island, New Zealand. Let's take a look at the location of that one. Out in that ocean rift zone, but much closer to the island than the previous quakes we've seen there. And next we see a 4.4 at that same location. That's an aftershock. That one took place just under an hour after the 5.5 magnitude. Here's a 5.1 at Tonga. Here's a 4.6 at Nicaragua. This one occurring at 2:46 Universal Time. We see a 5.4 at the Macquarie Island region, very, very close to Antarctica there, very far south. Here's a Costa Rican quake at a 4.5 magnitude. And coming in about 3 hours before we shot the video is a 5.0 at Indonesia. Here's the windy.com pressure map. We'll let this advance about 24 hours till about 8 o'clock UTC tomorrow. Again, please be an asset, not a liability in the event of a disaster. If you're wondering who the cavalry is, it's probably because it's you. So I say to you, de oppresso liber, folks, which means from the oppressed, the free. Volcano rundown for today, October 10th, includes Mount Aso. Volcanic ash advisory here, producing a 7,000-foot ash plume. Sakurajima, back on the list, back to exploding, 6,000-foot plume there. Mount Takono, 7,000-foot plume there. Popocatépetl, not sure, probably still exploding. Not observed, though. Perhaps satellite images are cloudy. Sangay, new volcanic emissions there. Revenador, exploding, 15,000-foot ash plume in Ecuador. Copihu, sporadic puffs of light volcanic ash. And Nevados de Chilean, not sure, not identifiable in satellite data. Again, charging hazards are pretty much non-existent. And the F2 ionosphere layer is looking pretty anomalous today. Let's let that play through. We can see a highly discharged nighttime side and a highly charged daytime side, making it up to 14 megahertz there over the western Pacific Ocean. I think. There it is. That's more like the Central Pacific. You see these big red blobs forming here right over my head. Majorly discharged F layer. Keep in mind, folks, at nighttime, the F2 layer goes away and it becomes a single layer. Let's not get into the physics. Here's where stuff is in the solar system. Milky Way galaxy team for the win. And there's where stuff will be in 1 week. Here's where stuff is above my head. Let's refresh. Isn't it refreshing to refresh, folks? Now, personally, I like to draw in the ecliptic. The moon is just about to set over there in Aquarius. If you want to make a sky map for yourself, check out in-the-sky.org. Put in your location. And know where things like Capella are. Here's a lightning map, courtesy lightningmaps.org. We've got some lightning off the East Coast, as well as in the central U.S. Heads up Lincoln, Nebraska. There's thunder rolling in. Lightningmaps.org. The next time you hear thunder, check it out. Yes, you can calculate the air density. Look at all that lightning rolling in Lincoln. Heads up Lincoln! And here's the Weather Underground U.S. Doppler radar map showing significant snow over Montana, possibly some Yeti activity up here. Please let us know if you have noticed a portal in the sky and Chewbacca-like entities coming out of it. Also some heavy snow over South Dakota, North Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming, and Colorado. Some wintry mix down there also. And let's move on to the Tropical Tidbits forecast. The GFS model shows that by October 13th, there's going to be a lot of snow in the north central U.S. Please plan to have your crops harvested, folks, if you're in these areas, as they're going to be toasty. And it's talk about a short growing season. We've seen record snowfall 2 years in a row, late springs, early winters, etc. Here's the water vapor map on the NASA GOES interactive weather satellites. We see a major convergence zone here over southwestern Colorado as an atmospheric river is forming with massively sudden cloud nucleation and massive field force lines here showing up in the dry air. Let's zoom in. Check out the Hall current streamers there showing up, folks. They're not chemtrails. They're not contrails. They're electrical current, essentially radio frequencies, attenuating the clouds. Look at this shock wave coming out of here. That is amazing. Some interesting sky features going on right now. If you're in places like Utah, Colorado, especially if you've got the dry air above your head, go out and have a look up. You may see some odd cloud formations. Look at all the parallel lines, folks. If you're not familiar with Hall currents, well, Hall currents are what control the Earth's weather largely. Look up Birkeland currents and read the Wikipedia article. Hall currents are the perpendicular currents that come out of an electrical field. And this is why we see these perpendicular to the direction of water flowing through the atmosphere. What a great example. Again, if you're in one of those dry areas, take some cloud photos. They should be interesting, to say the least. Here are the Western jet streams, courtesy nullschool.net, and Meridional jet stream flow big time. Look at this north to south flow here over the central Atlantic. Some strange days for flights, folks. Let's look at the eastern jets and then move on, as there's plenty of stuff to cover yet. Bubble butts, bubble economies, power grids being shut down on purpose, and more. First, we're going to look at cosmic rays. Links to this also below the video. There's the apatity monitor, seeing a spike right around midnight on the 8th. There's Barentsburg. Here's Athens, Greece neutron monitor. Looks like we're looking at the same spike there. Midnight on the 8th. Next, we've got Mexico City. Probably the same cosmic ray spike we're seeing there, as it's at a different spot on the Earth. Located a little farther west, obviously. Next, we'll look at Moscow, if it loads. And there's the portion of the Moscow neutron monitor that actually loaded. And finally, we'll look at Oulu and 2 Antarctican monitors. There's Oulu, Finland. Here's DOMC Antarctica. And there's DOMB Antarctica. Moving on to that is a plastic bubble butt, and that is a sinkhole. Let's talk about total nonsense. Instagram model makes millions off of her rear end. You think she looks silly? I think she looks silly. Yeah. Links to this article below the video. And while I am on Instagram, I do not follow Andrea Vasile, who says she can bring in $500 to $5,000 on every post, and that it is her honesty about her fake plastic hindquarters that sets her apart from other Instagram influencers. Well done. Talk about content. Why would you subscribe to our YouTube channel when you could subscribe to her Instagram feed? Looks brilliant. Up to 3 million Californians to lose power on purpose. Now, PG&E is probably not going to be able to repair their own infrastructure. They've created billions of dollars in liability. They're blamed for countless deaths. What was it? 93 deaths? 86 people died last year in a town called Paradise, which was virtually destroyed. And PG&E has been found responsible for dozens of other wildfires in recent years. So they're preemptively shutting off the power to up to 3 million subscribers in California. Talk about a busted state. California. If you're not prepared for disasters, get out of Dodge. And when I say Dodge, I mean California. Please leave a comment if you think California is even more leftist than New Jersey. Let's talk about peakprosperity.com, a site that I stumbled on yesterday. Links to this site also below the video, as well as to this page from Air Industries. How to prepare for natural disasters. Check it out. It's a great infographic. Share with your friends. Share with your foes. General planning, basic emergency kits, pet emergency kits, watches versus warning, earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, insurance, tornadoes, winter storms, etc. Great infographic. Even though prepping month's over, your prepping never ends. Congratulations to John B. Goodenow, M. Stanley Whittingham, and Akira Yoshino for the development of lithium-ion batteries, winning them the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Links to this article also below the description. Please leave a comment if a lithium-ion battery is allowing you to view this video. And keep in mind, PCs have lithium-ion batteries too in the bus battery. So just saying, kind of an important piece of technology if you know what I mean. We've linked this article also about insights on how the strongest magnets in the universe form, and I'm not particularly impressed by the theory. However, read up on it anyway. Magnetars. They're not fully understood how they have such strong fields. And anyway, another theory has emerged, which is that a star explodes and its life ends, and computer simulations, let me just repeat that, computer simulations suggest that the magnetic field generated would be sufficient to explain the exceptionally strong magnetic fields in magnetars. They're thought to have the strongest fields in the universe, yada, yada, yada. Again, links to the article below the video. Talk about some more cosmology. This galaxy right here, which is called NGC 5189. This planetary nebula hosts a Wolf-Rayet star. It's been found to have a bunch of carbon in it. So check out this article here on phys.org. Carbon-rich hot bubble detected in the planetary nebula. Reviewing it through various different X-ray bands here. And an interesting scenario. People who understand what's going on at the Sapphire Project should be interested in this, as chemical analysis of stars is becoming increasingly important in the world of cosmology. The theory is that as the star explodes, it emits a late thermal pulse which causes the carbon-rich material to form there. Please leave a comment if you've got theories about what's going on in the center of NGC 5189. Let's talk about hot Jupiters. Now, I don't talk about exoplanets too much on this channel, as I'm more interested in understanding the sun, which is basically the toolbox for the rest of cosmology. However, this is an interesting one. The hottest hot Jupiter ever discovered. Now, it takes Jupiter about 12 years to orbit the sun. This one orbits its star in less than 1 day. It's estimated to be only 1.4% of an astronomical unit, which amounts to, it's located only about 1.2 million miles away from its host star. So much closer than the Earth is to the Sun. In fact, much closer than Mercury is to the Sun. The planet NGTS-10b is a little more than 2.1 times Jupiter's mass and about 1.2 times Jupiter's diameter. Again, links to this article also below the video on the hottest Jupiter known. And it orbits that star in less than 1 day, folks. It's extreme, as is some of our content on YouTube, so please press like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. And please consider supporting us on Patreon, our real source of revenue, as these videos are monetized for the sake of Google's income, not the sake of ours. Google pays us precisely nothing for these videos. So please check out patreon.com/smAsho and get our updates before everybody else. And thanks to the Smash team for tuning in. Stay tuned for one bonus feature, just one. And it's the colorized magnetogram of your local yellow dwarf. I am noting down here in the southeast that there is some activity popping off. You can see fields forming right here. Keep in mind the magnetic environment can change with absolutely no notice. Please stare at the sun, and when you're doing so, don't drink it. If you drink, stare at the sun anyway, just don't drive. And since it'll never be now again, may the solar wind be at your back and the atherosclerosis absent from your veins.